Hello, what's up? I wanted to say, what's up, chicken butt? Did you say that when you were a kid? 10 cents a cut? Or was it 15 cents a cut? I don't remember. Let's see. I think I've got everything ready, set to go. Right before I came on, the wax on my teeth needed to get redone a little bit, so excuse me. Crazy. Okay, so everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of hoping to start a conversation, open up a discussion, learn something, be educational. All my videos are made for the tube of you, and it's an infotainment platform. Please hit your like button if you don't mind. It does a lot for the algorithm. I'll stick that there. Make sure you're still subscribed. Share a video of mine with somebody that you think might like my channel, and turn on your notification bell to ring. So I want to just jump right into it. And I want to turn my top chat onto live chat. So I came on today mostly to share an idea that is crazy. Okay. It's completely insane. Remember when that plane went down in the Potomac River? Was that January 26th? I meant to look it up before we started. The Black Hawk helicopter, Black Hawk helicopter crash in DC. I want to say it was January 26th of last year, but no, I was incorrect. It was January 29th of this year. So pretty close. Okay. I'm glad that I was pretty much on target. So January 29th of this year, the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines regional jet approaching Reagan National Airport collided over the Potomac River. Okay. Before any of us knew that there was a female co-pilot, or maybe she was the pilot, I don't know. But before anything came out, the man who'd been sworn in a week and a couple of days prior to be the dear leader made some horrendous post about DEI. And then he immediately started kind of dismantling DEI. And, when I was doing my stuff this morning, just, kind of taking care of myself and the house and the dogs, all of a sudden it came to me, and I thought, this whole thing with the Trump derangement syndrome, the post that Bigly Piggly made about Rob Reiner, that horrible, horrible, disgusting post where he was essentially creating a new medical diagnosis that he's spoken about many times before, but it was really like he was asserting, the TDS, sometimes referred to as TDS. It's like, no, it's not even a thing, except that he is the cause of it, right? If it were a thing. So he's basically trying to make it a medical diagnosis. He's also trying to make himself like the medical examiner in determining in his post, because he thinks he's the almighty, that by saying that that's what led to his demise and his wife's demise, that he can then now say that Trump derangement syndrome is dangerous and that we need to wipe out any hint of Trump derangement syndrome, right? All of a sudden, I thought that's where he's going with this. So then he can say, you can't talk about it, you can't post about it, you can't even think about not liking him, because you can be deemed danger to self, danger to others. And in his post, he was really specifically implying that it was the TDS that enraged other people that then caused his demise. Isn't that how he pretty much phrased it? I mean, that's what I got out of it. And I know that I could be way off. I know that I could be way off. So I want to walk delicately. And at the same time, I want to assert the possibility that the son, Nick Reiner, might have done it, and he might have been brainwashed. He might have been radicalized. He might have been rugged. I mean, we know that he had a tendency to do substances, to abuse substances and be addicted to substances. He may or may not have relapsed. Even if he hadn't relapsed, he still could have been rugged, right? And even without rugging, he could still be radicalized and brainwashed. I mean, with these here gadgets and Russia, I can't help but think what it was that the Reiners and the Obamas were meeting for on Sunday, a week ago, yesterday, January 14th. I think it's the second day of Hanukkah. I think the Saturday the 13th was the first day of Hanukkah. And we know that Rob Reiner was working on a documentary series about Daddy Vladdy and Biggly Piggly's connection. In 2017, he had spearheaded a committee that was focused on the former USSR's potential interference with the 2016 election. So he spearheaded that committee, a nonprofit group that was nonpartisan. And what I read was that it disbanded 18 months later. So I don't know why it disbanded, but I would think that maybe there could have been threats. We also know that Biggly Piggly is really proud of the fact that he can't forgive his perceived enemies, and that he's on a revenge tour. He's been on a revenge tour probably his whole life, but pretty unabashedly since the second presidential term for him began. And I can't imagine that he or Daddy Vladdy would have not been completely threatened by somebody as talented and intelligent and as connected as Rob Reiner and his beautiful wife, Michelle Singer, that they wouldn't feel extremely threatened by that. And I can't imagine that they didn't have anything to do with it. I really can't. I can't get past that. It's almost like two things could be true at once. Like there could have been scheming to undermine Rob Reiner's project, his documentary series about Russian influence, and Daddy Vladdy and Biggly Piggly's love affair, or whatever you freaking want to call it. And then the whole thing with Nick. Those two things could have been happening simultaneously without connecting to each other. That's entirely possible. So I think that at the very least. But Anna Bees, hello. How are you, my dear? I don't know if you heard what I was just saying. I could try to recap it real quick. Let me just read it from my notes. I might say it more better. Just like the chopper crash over the Ronald Reagan International Airport, the quick declaration of being anti-DEI. Remember when Biggly Piggly made that post before anybody knew, days before anybody knew that there was a female on the helicopter that was allegedly the pilot or co-pilot. But he immediately started dismantling DEI. And then when it became public knowledge that there was a female pilot or co-pilot, it was sort of like the "see, I told you so." DEI is dangerous. Therefore, we're already taking it apart. So It just felt similar to his erratic, insane post that he made about the Reiners. I mean, he didn't even wait. Forgive me, trigger warning. He didn't even wait for the bodies to cool down. And then he's making this post about the extreme case of Trump derangement syndrome that Rob Reiner had that led to his not being alive anymore, specifically because it enraged other people. So he's kind of implying, I don't know, let's just say that Nick was a Trump supporter. Let's just say that his son was MAGA. It's entirely possible. I've got one of those, believe it or not. Anna Bees knows that, but nobody else does. No one must know. And I keep waiting for the day when he wakes up and sees the writing on the wall, but you don't know if that's ever going to happen. If indeed it becomes apparent. Okay, what else did I write here? Trying to claim that the TDS is dangerous because it can inspire people to unalive. So Biggly Piggly made himself the medical examiner, saying that that's what caused Rob Reiner's being deceased. He also was writing a DSM, a diagnostic statistical manual online on Truth Social because he's got the power to do that. I mean, kind of, but he's not only got illusions of grandeur, but he is the president, right? So he's like creating this new diagnosis and he's diagnosing Rob Reiner with it. So then he can say, Anna Bees, he can turn around today and say any hint of TDS is dangerous and therefore we must eradicate it, right? My best friends are Republicans. And is my lighting weird? Do I look radioactive to you, Anna Bees? I feel like it's, everything, especially with the holidays and people visiting and rooms being different, the lighting is so different every day and it's so hard to get it together. I feel like it's a really weird lighting today. But more importantly, get back on track. The Biggly Piggly's deranged reasoning for outlawing any criticism of him. He can say it can and will lead to TDS and TDS is dangerous. So no one's allowed to say, post, think anything negative. It's more reddish, but it's okay. Let me see if I can make it. I've got red and green lights over here. Is that a little bit better or no? So anyway, he was so ready to dismantle DEI. It was almost like that was part of the plan, in my humble conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly, with masterminding that plane crash, to then say, well, obviously it was because there was a female pilot and the DEI killed the 67 people on the American Airlines flight and the 3 members of the U.S. Army on the Black Hawk. So yeah, that's pretty crazy, but it's more than likely, in my opinion, that the Reiners and the Obamas were getting together on Sunday to discuss the whole thing with Daddy Vladdy's country and his interference in our elections and his connection with Biggly Piggly. And I don't know how close Rob Reiner was to the finishing touches on his documentary series. I wonder. And why is no one talking about that? Why is no one talking about the documentary series that he was about to, that he was in the process of producing. I think he was in the end stages, or the fact that he spearheaded that nonprofit organization that was doing the same type of investigating in 2017 about the 2016 election. And as far as I know, that committee to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 election, that committee was only together for 18 months and then they disband. But my guess would be that they formally disband, but they continued to do their work. I mean, obviously he did, but I just have a feeling that it wasn't all just a deranged, recovered, or person with an addiction, a person with schizophrenia and a history of addiction. I just have a feeling that that's not what it was. And I also have a feeling, Anna Bees, tell me what you think, that so many pictures they're releasing right now of Nick with like the craziest freaking Charles Manson eyes, it's almost like they're touched up and they're just, again, with the psyop. That's so scary. He's such an authoritarian. Yes, it's better. Oh, good. Thank you. So yeah, the so scary with the psyop. And I want to reiterate what I said yesterday too about it being like a terrorist attack, not just on Hollywood, but on comedians specifically. I mean, Rob Reiner was a great comedian. His father was a great comedian. Even Nick was trying to be a comedian. And then the connection with Conan O'Brien at the party. I would imagine that it shook everyone to their core. And sure, if we think that it was the son and he's in custody, then everyone else is safe. But if the son were, I mean, they got to be looking at the kid's electronic devices and his emails and his texts and his history of what he's reading and watching, right? So many of these crazy assassinations that have happened in the year of 2025 have been people that are radicalized MAGA hats, right? Yes, they're making Nick look evil. Well, and I mean, he looks completely evil in these pictures that are coming out, but are the pictures genuine? Are they authentic, or are they touched up? I can't imagine that they're not touched up, because if I saw a photo of my kid looking like that, I would put him in a straitjacket. I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but truth to every joke. They're attacking all the people in Hollywood and scientists and teachers. Exactly. It's all so crazy. Anna Bees. So I want to jump around a little bit. I just want to jump straight to the Kylie Rodney case, because we were discussing that the night before last, and you were here. When I looked it up on the AI, and AI said specifically that she disappeared after the party. Why would they say that? Because there's no evidence. The party hadn't ended. All of the evidence, all of the reports are that the party went on and she went home early. So she didn't disappear after the party. They could have even phrased it like, she disappeared after she left the party. But the fact that they tried to like close the party down and then she disappeared is so like contrived. And it just makes, I mean, we've always known that the people that are in Truckee, that are around the whole Kylie Rodney case, that they're heavily involved with Google and YouTube, the making, and Mr. Z. So the Hamburglers and Mr. Z primarily. Yes, they programmed AI to say things they want you to believe. Right, but the disappeared after a party is not even consistent with the official narrative. So, yeah, it's very contrived. And again, isn't that interesting that she disappeared after a party and the Reiners got rubbed out after a party? Coincidence? Possibly. The Idaho 4 was after a party. And with all of the cases, they're not doing chronological timelines leading up to the events. Like, they're starting their chronological timelines at the time of the event. That's not how you do it. You not only go back to the top of the day, the top of the hour, you continue to go back to the days leading up to. This is ridiculous. And that's kind of the same thing with Charlie Kirk. And let me just say, with the Charlie Kirk case, that with suspicion around his wife, isn't it a fact that like 95% of all spouses that get rubbed out, it's the spouse that did it? I mean, I don't know if it's as high as 95%, but it's a high percentage. You always suspect the spouse. If the spouse didn't do it, the spouse hired somebody to do it. Way more often than not. And then when that spouse is benefiting to the tune of $150 million within a couple weeks or months of the incident, and they've taken over your company, the deceased company, and replaced the deceased with themselves as the CEO, or even if there's, a board of directors who did that, you got to add that into the equation. You got to look at the big picture. Yes, they are involved with all the tech and money laundering and grow farms, etc. It's a very high percentage. I don't know the exact number either. I'm just going to ask AI, maybe see what they have to say about it. Percentage of spouses who end up being guilty. See, they're going to look at my history if something happens to my husband and say, oh my God, she looked that up. Who ended up being guilty of unaliving spouse. Yeah. Let's say Red Round specifically. Well, yeah, of course, husbands are convicted more often than wives for spouse murder. I'm really glad I looked this up. It's not as high as I was saying, but AI says, and we can't trust AI. I got to tell you a big correction from the other night upon further researching. In a study of spouse red rum cases in large urban U.S. counties around the late 80s and early 90s, approximately 80% of defendants were convicted or pleaded guilty. Well, that's not even the what I'm looking for. That's not the same percentage of what I'm asking. They're just saying 80% of defendants were convicted. But I'm asking, when people passed away, what's the percentage rate of that the spouse had something to do with it? And it can be looking natural, it can be looking accidental, it can be looking self-inflicted, it can be looking like misadventure, like the guy who pushed his wife off of a cliff. That's happened more than once, but I mean, there's also been wives that have pushed husbands off of cliffs. So yeah, that 80% really isn't connected to what I was asking. I can do more research later, but we know it's extremely high. I want to say it's as high as 95% of the time when like a spouse is missing. 95% of the time, like look at Chris Watts or look at Barry Morphew. But what I wanted to correct AI on is, and this is really important, when AI said that RFK Jr.'s wife, Cheryl Hines, had been Rob Reiner's personal assistant for 30 years, that was completely incorrect. 5 years, as far as my research indicates. Because, yeah, that didn't sound right, like that it was from the time that she started. She started for his 50th birthday in 1994. She was hired part-time just to help organize this lavish party that they had at a restaurant or a hotel. So the people that, like Rob's wife, Michelle, would have just said, hey, let's go out to dinner for your 50th birthday. We'll have all the family there. It'll be a big deal. And then it turned into this massive party of people hiding in the basement. And Cheryl Hines was hired to organize or help organize that party. It's interesting that it's 1994 when he turned 50, because I was thinking, or it's just interesting that the 50 was this big mile marker when you look at the whole 50th birthday of Little E. That wasn't until 2003. I was thinking it was 93, but no. Little E is younger than Bigly Piggly. Was younger. He might still be living, though. You never know. But Bigly Piggly is only 1 year older than Rob Reiner. So I think that's something to keep in mind too, as far as there being a competitiveness and kind of, like the typical pissing contest crap. It's a very high percentage. I don't know the exact number either. Yeah. Oh, so right before I came on, I was trying to watch, a few minutes before I came on, I was trying to watch a video on MS Now called Republican Kana Slams Attorney General Bondi, says she's lost all credibility over the e-files. And that video had been taken down by YouTube. Or maybe MS Now took it down. It was unavailable to watch. And it had been posted 5 hours prior. And I thought, yeah, I know that they're working overtime right now to censor. They're trying to censor people. When I tried to put up my announcement for my live the night before last, I think I had Trump's name in my title, which is never a good idea. Like the Trumpstein files, I think works because that's not really a word. But Trump by itself is not a good word to have in your title. What it did was it made it so that my laptop told me that it couldn't make the connection to have my stream. So I tried again with the new title and everything was fine. Oh, wow. They are censoring now. Yeah, they're in a full-blown panic. So the image that I used for the thumbnail, Annabise, excuse me, you probably noticed it, is one of those photos from the e-files that were released on Friday was then, it's one of those 16 that were then deleted. And in that specific one, it's Bigly Piggly with 4 really hot young women or girls around him. And in my opinion, the 2 that are on his right, so when you're looking at the image, the 2 on his left, those 2 look 16-ish to me. They definitely look underage for sure. 100% in my opinion. The 2 on the right are kind of harder to see and harder to distinguish. I could even say that they look like they're 18 maybe, but the 2 on the left, But then by redacting it, by unreleasing it, they're kind of implicating themselves, and they're just completely hosing up the whole thing, which is great, which is really great. But then I wake up this morning, you're always like, okay, what are the shenanigans today, Donnie Two Dolls? And this morning, he's declaring takeover of Greenland again. It's just like, yeah, you're not trying to create a distraction. Obviously not. I didn't look at the thumbnail. They look underage. I agree. Oh, you looked at it now. Good. Yeah. Yeah. So it's great that people screenshot it before it got deleted and it's all over the interweb. Damn it. Damn that interweb. Thank goodness for people screenshotting. I wonder if they've already taken it down on the Wayback Machine or if people can still find it on the Wayback Machine. Hear my daughter yelling at one of the dogs probably. So I wanted to mention that it used to be considered unprofessional for a physician or a nurse like Anna B's, or like a nurse practitioner. I don't know that nurses have the ability to diagnose professionally. You could probably answer that, Anna B's, but of course a nurse practitioner definitely could. But a nurse can probably make a provisional diagnosis that would most likely be accurate, right? At the very least. Anyway, tell me if you agree with this. In my opinion, right now, currently, the tide has shifted in the medical profession, that it used to be considered completely off limits and unprofessional to diagnose somebody who was not your actual medical patient, and especially from afar, from like the public eye. My crazy daughter's being all loud. I told her not to be, but just because it distracts me. I'm fine with you guys hearing that I have a crazy daughter, but what am I saying? So now I think it's changed, that it's shifted, that it's fine for medical professionals to give provisional diagnosis. Yeah.
Did you move the painting thing?
Yeah, it's right on the other side of the door, on that little corner table. Do you see it right next to the TV? Right between the door to this room and.
Thank you.
Can you shut the door, babe?
Yeah.
Thank you, honey. And do you mind keeping it down a bit? Thanks. Love ya. She's so cute. She's doing a painting, and I set her painting stuff aside that she left out last night. Which is crazy to leave it out when you've got 3 cats and 3 dogs, and one of them is like bouncy like Tigger. Anyway, what was I saying about something? That it is fine to diagnose from afar, right? What are you saying? Where's Nanny? I want to say, damn it, Nancy. Yeah, dang it, Nancy. No, we can't diagnose, but we are advocates for the patient. So we can give our opinion to the physician, but he ultimately gives the diagnosis. Right, but most likely any diagnosis that you're opining on is probably going to be consistent with what the physician comes up with in the end would be my guess. And have you noticed the shift? So a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists are coming out publicly and pretty much diagnosing from the evidence that we see that the president is getting treated for dementia, that the bruises on his hand are consistent with IVs that would, I think it's like a monthly protocol, that it might be like a Alzheimer's medication to temp it down, to manage it, and that the multiple cognitive tests indicates a monitoring of a condition. And because the type of cognitive tests that they are, that it's most likely what am I trying to say? Monitoring dementia, which obviously I'm exhibiting signs of right now, right? And then the thing with the MRIs, 2 MRIs 6 months apart would again indicate a monitoring of a condition. And that's not even to say anything about the stroke that he looks like he apparently had at least one of, right? Diagnosing from afar is okay. It's just our opinion. Exactly. It just used to be really frowned upon. But now, at this moment in history, with this maniac being in charge of the nuclear code, it's almost like there's a duty to warn with physicians that have taken the Hippocratic Oath, in my opinion. That's what it looks and feels like to me. So I didn't want to stay on long because I wanted to go for a nice long walk before it gets too cold. It's not too cold today, which is nice. It was too cold yesterday. And it's probably going to be too cold in the upcoming days. So I got to wrap it up and take advantage of the great outdoors. Anything you want to say before we wrap up, Anna Bees? I did want to talk momentarily about the eugenics. The eugenics that Donnie Toodles, Biggly Piggly is into. And Little E was also into eugenics. And they were really into having all these like weird scientists around. So, I used to think that Little E obviously had faked his demise and escaped prison. I felt that way for a couple of years. And then a couple of years ago, I shifted to thinking, yeah, there were a lot of people that wanted him gone. And that's probably what happened. Oh, before I forget, Noor Jasmine, are you familiar with her channel, Anna Bees? She put out the greatest effing video. I'm going to highly recommend it, and I'll put a link in the description here. Noor Jasmine did a deep dive on Little E's cellmate. What's his name? It's a weird Italian name, like Taglioni, but it's got something before the Taglioni, like raw Taglioni. I'm totally getting that wrong, I'm sure. Anyway, a really informative video. I knew I'd heard much about him in the past, but I hadn't really tracked it. And Noor Jasmine does an incredible breakdown. And I think it was in her video that said that when they were removing Little E from the jail, from the prison, that you could see his ear on the stretcher, and that it wasn't the same ear. That's usually a good indicator, because some people have like the connected lobes and some people have like the disconnected lobes. I don't know what I have. I might have disconnected lobes because it hangs down a little bit below where it connects up here. I don't know. But anyway, I know I've heard people say that over the years. And I know Hal Sparks thinks that he's still alive. And I think that Hal Sparks is very wise, and he's also very like anti-conspiracy theory. And I just thought, I hadn't heard that detail about his ear before. But there were details that I didn't know about. I think his name might be John Taglioni. Let me see. The cop who was Epstein's, he was a very dirty cop, Epstein's cellmate. He had unalived 4 people, much in the same fashion as how Kristi Noem unalived her puppy dog. Nicholas Tartaglione. And it might be Tartaglione, but I think it's Tartaglione is how I think people were saying it. She was calling him Taglione, and then she realized that she was saying it wrong, and she edited. But Nicholas Tartaglione was sentenced Monday to 4 consecutive life sentences for the 2016 kidnappings and unalivings. And that was just a couple of years ago, June 12th of 2024. So he was in prison. He was Little E's cellmate when there was that first attempt of self-unaliving a few days before the actual unaliving. But Little E had said that Nicholas Tartaglione had tried to unalive him. And then he changed his story. I have heard the same thing about him probably getting an IV medication for dementia. And Big E is, yes, I like him. I mean, her. Oh, yeah, Nor Jasmine. She's great. She's so good at what she does. Always with the tinfoil hat, though. I get a little sick of the tinfoil hat, and I don't think there's any need for it, but that's just her signature. Silly. But anyway, the eugenics. So one of the things that Virginia Giuffre said in her book very specifically is that Jeffrey had a plan that when he passed away, they would freeze him, and then he would try to be brought back to life someday with all of science, right? That was his plan. And you got to remember how connected this guy is. So yeah, he knew a lot, and a lot of people wanted him gone. And I do still believe that he was rubbed out. However, I also think he could have escaped and had a body double in there. So, when people say, well, like if there was any kind of conspiracy like that with either of those scenarios, you'd have to have so many people in on it. Like that couldn't be. And it's like, yeah, you really don't need that many people in on it. I mean, if you have the person at the top in control of the situation, giving that order, that's pretty much all you need. And you had William Barr, the AG, whose father, Donald Barr, was the man who had basically hired Little E when he was like 21 to work at what had been an all-girls prep school in Manhattan. And Little E didn't have credentials. And Donald also subsequently, or interestingly enough, prior to hiring Little E, he'd written that book. I think it was prior to hiring him. Anyway, he wrote a book about oligarchs in space with teenage SMEC slaves. What a quinky dink. And little E quickly got introduced to a lot of powerful figures. And Donald Barr had been part of whatever organization it was that preempted the CIA. Donald Barr had worked with that. There's so much of that type of stuff in the situation at hand. There's so much of that type of stuff. I mean, I don't think it's delusional to think that Melania and Erica are assets at the very least. Honeypots. And William Barr, and then who's that other disgusting guy? Steve Bannon. So Steve Bannon said that he was working closely with little E at the time of his passing. He was working closely with him to help little E revamp his reputation, right? However, there's also stories that Steve Bannon was asking little E for advice on basically how to have more mojo, because Steve Bannon has none. So there's some stories that Steve Bannon was consulting with little E routinely to essentially revamp his own reputation. But then the official narrative is that they were meeting to revamp Jeffrey's reputation. So how low would you have to be asking a convicted pedo for tips on improving your image? But I find quite often with crazy BS situations like this that often the tables are turned. Every accusation is a confession, right? While I didn't know that little E was almost unalive by his cellmate. Yeah, well, so it was documented as a attempted self-unaliving. So then it was like laying the foundation for like the 2 weeks later that he did do the unaliving of himself. But I don't think that's accurate. He had transferred $550 million less than 48 hours before he passed away. I think he changed his will before he passed away. And he had a hearing coming up that he thought he had a really good shot of asking for basically, the home monitoring instead of being held in the prison until his trial. And why wouldn't he think he had a really good shot at that when you look at what happened with Alex Acosta and his stupid ass sweetheart deal from 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009? Why wouldn't he think that he's going to have that happen again? Because even though him and Biggly Piggly were at odds and probably at each other's throats, Biggly Piggly knew that E had dirt on him. And they both knew that little E could take him down easily. Sorry, that just distracted me. A little plug. Yeah. I'm going to wrap up too. It's just 50 minutes. But the dog's scratching at the door and I'm almost out of water. And I'm choking. Donald Barr. Wait, what? Who is he? Is he related to William? Yes. Donald Barr is William Barr's father. Donald Barr was the headmaster at, what was the name of the high school in Manhattan? The prep school, Dalton. I think it's Dalton Prep School in Manhattan, where little E was hired without a college degree, without credentials. He was hired to teach math and physics. So Donald Barr had been the headmaster for a few years, but he had also worked for whatever was the precursor for the CIA. He also was deep in the financial world. So then he was the headmaster for the school that basically, all of the titans from the financial world in Manhattan sent their kids to Dalton High School. And he resigned the same year that little E was hired, 1974. But his resignation was the end of the school year of 1974. And then little E started in 1974 in the fall when the new school year started. So at the very least, he pulled strings to get little E hired there. So yeah, very important. Thank you for asking that question. Donald Barr is William Barr's dad. So William Barr, being the attorney general and being like the last person to see little E alive, and maybe the first person on the scene when he was not alive, William Barr should have had nothing to do with the Epstein case because of the conflict of interest. Massive conflict of interest. I mean, little E could have destroyed his father's reputation, and he probably had some involvement in some, at the very least, questionable crap too. So yeah, that's the deal with William Barr and Donald Barr. And Donald Barr is the one who wrote the book about the teenage SMEC slaves on a different planet, alien teenage sex SMEC slaves and oligarchs that ran the planet. Like, you don't think that that's exactly what that other E douchebag, the big E, had in mind? Yeah. Who was Alex Acosta? Why was Alex Acosta the AG when Obama was president? Was he? I didn't know that. But yeah, I mean, Obama's not completely squeaky clean either. I mean, we all know that, right? That's so crazy. I didn't know any of this. Yeah, it's all in Nora Jasmine's video. You'll love the video. So let me look up what you just said about. I don't think Alex Acosta was the AG, but he was. I'll look that up. He was the the Secretary of Labor when Bigley Pigley in his first term. So Bigley Pigley appointed Alex Acosta in 2018 to be the Secretary of Labor, and then he had to step down in 2019 when little E was arrested. And he almost didn't get sworn in because of all of that stuff in Florida with the 2008 case. So he's held high positions his entire life. You know, he's a Harvard grad. But I don't think he's ever been the attorney general. I could be wrong. Let me see. I'll just ask, was Alex Acosta ever attorney general? He might have been. Let's see. He was attorney general for civil rights and the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, former dean of Florida International University. So AI says no, he was never the U.S. AG. However, he held significant roles serving as the assistant attorney general for civil rights 2003 to 2005. So you are correct there. Or wait, no, hold on. And later as the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida 05 to 09 under President Bush. Right, it was President Bush. That might be what you're getting it confused with. But let me see what you're saying. One sec. Because Obama was president from 09 to 17. But yeah, Bush would have been president before that. Because yeah, I've wondered like who was president when the sweetheart deal went down. But the people in charge of the prisons at the time when little E disappeared or was taken out, the president and the attorney general were the top two people in charge of all of that. So that's so crazy. I didn't know any of this. So interesting, Jazz. William Barr had motive. Yeah, he did. And access. And Steve Bannon had access too. He was, I think, meeting with little E almost every day. And Bannon is just as dirty as the rest of them. Dershowitz is one of the dirtiest. That is it Alan Dershowitz, that douchebag, 60-year Harvard professor monster, the one that made Virginia Giuffre say that she may have mistaken him for someone else, and that he got a massage but he kept his underwear on even though he's a nudist all over freaking Martha's Vineyard. Gross. Maybe that he wasn't the AG. Sorry. No, you're fine, my dear. Thank you, Jazz, for clearing that up. Exactly. And it's always good to ask questions. We love asking questions. That's what we're here for. And some people get confused about when Pamela Bondi was the AG for Florida, because I don't think she was the AG for Florida until like 2011. And a lot of times people think she was the AG when that bullcrap deal went down. The sweetheart deal. Who was Florida AG in 2008? Bill McCollum, not a name I'm familiar with. He is congressman, U.S. attorney, state level legal matters in Florida. So yeah, I mean, everybody involved in that Alex Acosta deal, I think, should be tried and convicted of illegal activity. I agree. Alan D is one of the worst. He is absolutely one of the worst. He's one of the dirtiest, one of the filthiest, one of the most decrepit, most disgusting, dangerous people. And you think about all the dangerous people that Virginia had dirt on, and the timing of her unaliving and the stories of leading up to her unaliving, with the ridiculous school bus accident, with the really weird, almost died from going to the butterfly camping place and got bitten by a mosquito, and then fell down and broke her neck, and then got meningitis and this, that, and the other thing. All of that sounds like attempts on her life, in my opinion. And then again, for her, the way she was discovered at her ranch is like a cookie cutter duplication of the way RFK Jr.'s second wife was discovered at her ranch 2 years into a bitter custody battle. Mary Richardson Kennedy passed away in 2012. Almost cookie cutter duplicate. And why would these women of wealth, I mean, they were both millionaires at the time of their passing, why would they be at these said alleged ranch properties by themselves without security cameras, without all kinds of home security? Just a woman, the most dangerous place for a woman to be, the most common place for a woman to be attacked, is asleep in her own freaking bed. So Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, dear, for being here. Oh, wait, Drea's here. Holy crap. Now we can't wrap up. I don't even want to try to spell his last name. Yeah, Dershowitz. Just call him Dirtbag Alan El Disgusto. Hey, Drea. Super late, as always. Hope you have a happy holidays. I'm so happy to see you again. And I asked you the other night when you came in what your handle had been before YouTube changed it. Because wasn't it a little bit different? And I'm just curious if you can just jog my memory. But lovely to see you both. So I couldn't resist. I had to put some like tiny houses up here, tiny church, little silly Christmas decorations. And then here, let's see if I put a tiny light right there. I got little tiny Christmas gnomes and a couple of like Dickens Christmas dudes on park benches. And a silly little, that's like a Christmas tree ornament that lights up like a house. And then over here is, you can't really see it, it's just like a red cardinal. It's the Ohio State bird. But yeah, I just couldn't resist putting some tiny stuff back here. Oh, and the tiny chicken coop. Wasn't it DIY Drea? There you go, Anna Bees. Exactly. That's, it all comes back to me now. All right, so I'm going to sign off. Love you guys. I hope you have a fantastic day. It's Monday. Again, I think we all need to brace ourselves for massive mayhem as Biggly Piggly continues to try to distract from the Trumpster fire that he's created. And the e-files are unraveling. Every move that they make it worse. I love my chicken coop. Yeah, I know. I had to look up how to spell chicken coop because I thought it was COUP and it's not. You spelled it right. All right. So take care of yourselves, drink your water, eat your protein, sunlight, sunshine, fresh air, exercise. I'm going to go do that now. Not preaching, just trying to remind all of us to do what we need to do, especially during the holidays. Really important to take good care of ourselves. And hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm going to be trying to do videos as much as possible through the holidays just because I need it. So let's see. End stream. Thanks again, you guys.